Lieutenant Vilixpran is pregnant again. Dukat tells Sisko, O'Brien, Odo, and Worf picks or it didn't happen. And Chief O'Brien makes the worst Klingon ever. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We are joined today by a very special guest, Mr. James L. Conway.
Hello, hello.
Today we are reviewing Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 1, Apocalypse Rising, written by, of course, Ira Steven Behr and Robert Hewitt Wolf, directed by, what do you know, Mr. James L. Conway. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So good to see you after all these years. We just talked about it. It's been close to 30 years. It's definitely been 25 years.
Yes, 25 years.
25 years since we've last worked together. I can remember right away when Ryan was telling me that you would be on the show. The first thing I remember was how much of a gentleman you are and how classy you were as a director. So let me just give you your flowers and your appreciation for leaving a good impression.
That's good. Nice to hear. It meant a lot to me. I loved Star Trek. I was there from season 1 of Next Generation, and I was there all the way to the very end of Enterprise. I would come and go over the years because of other projects, but to have been part of the very first season and the very last season of the whole Enterprise was a really exciting thing for me.
You know, since you mentioned it, I was looking at some of this stuff recently, and I didn't know this, or I hadn't remembered this, but yeah, you directed Broken Bow, so you set off Enterprise on its mission. And I know it's not 100% relevant to Deep Space Nine, but that was something I was super excited about because, of course, that also, featured Klingons, and it had what was his name? Tiny Lister, right? The guy that plays Debo on Friday, who is the Klingon in that episode.
Oh, yeah? No, really?
We had a big Klingon set, and then I didn't remember how many Klingons we had in Apocalypse Rising. When I watched it last week, I was blown away by how many Klingons. But I did remember that from the makeup department was like round the clock because it took so long to get those people in makeup. They couldn't stay the 12 or 14 hours. They had to have 2 shifts of makeup artists. And it was like 20 hours a day of makeup artists working because they had 4 hours to put it on, 2 hours to take it off, and then, 30 of them. It was remarkable.
That's one of the first things that I was looking at it. I put that in my notes. I was like, that is a ton of Klingon extras. Did they actually, go by and kind of ask you for any thoughts or approval on the Klingon makeup, or were there just way too many where you were just like, I trust you, you guys handle the Klingons, you do your thing?
Generally, they knew what they were doing and they delivered them to us. They were looking the way they should. Mm-hmm. But Rick hated when you could see makeup. So the camera department and the operators were very cognizant of how the makeup looked. And if there was anything wrong, they would stop and have to fix it because Rick would make you reshoot it. That particularly became a problem for Renee because Renee's makeup, as Odo, tended to have problems around the lips. In fact, when I saw the recap at the beginning of Apocalypse Rising, you could see that there was a lot of chappedness around his lips, which I know Rick used to hate. In the beginning of our episode, the makeup was good again.
Interesting. Cirroc, I'm sorry, I jumped on you. I thought you were going to say something.
No, that's just a little nugget of knowledge. I just didn't realize that he had that pet peeve about makeup and forcing the reshoot. So that meant that you want to get it right the first time because you definitely don't want to have to, go back in the lab and do it again.
Yes, it was a big thing for Rick. And yes, you had to make sure it was right. And because he would make you reshoot it, depending on how severe it was. But he would get angry, not just at the makeup department, because once it's out of their hands and you're on set, it's really the camera people and the director who have to keep an eye on it and make sure that it's looking good. So everybody was very aware of it. And so when you've got that many Klingons running around, let me tell you, there's a lot to look at and a lot to be careful about.
That's a lot. So I can imagine that you didn't do too many of the heavy Klingon scenes early in the morning because it would take time for them to get that many people on the set at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m.
Right. They would schedule the day so that you needed the least amount in the beginning, and then it would grow during the day for the big scenes by the afternoon. But when we had to have that many of our stars, I mean, if all of our principals had to be in the Klingon makeup when we were on the ship or on the planet. So it was, the actors were getting there at probably 4 a.m., 3:30, 4 a.m. For makeup.
Yeah.
And Dorn, of course, was like, "Get welcome to my world, guys."
Yeah, exactly. I do this every day. One of the things that first came to my mind when I was watching this episode was Avery's thoughts that I've heard him say on multiple occasions about his worst experience on Deep Space Nine, and he always brings up having to wear this Klingon.
Was it the teeth?
It was the whole thing. He hated having the makeup, the process, the hair, he didn't like sitting in the makeup chair that long. And I just wanted to ask you if that frustration was something that he voiced, or was it, present, or was it just something that he kind of kept to himself?
He never complained. So it was one of those things that he was a total pro and he kept it to himself. And then afterwards, he said, God, I hated that.
Okay. You know what I was thinking?
During the whole process, great.
I was thinking, like, it looked like he honed and harnessed that frustration and used it as his character, because he really came off as an ornery Klingon, which worked so beautifully. And so I'm wondering if maybe he was just sitting in that makeup chair saying, as soon as they say action, I'm letting it out. I'm going to make it happen.
Well, it was funny having to modulate the tone of the performance as Klingons. And in fact, there's the scene about it where Worf is correcting them as they're not being strong enough or being too strong. But I had to do that for years on these different actors, because the Klingon had to be at a certain level, and usually had to bring actors up to that level.
Yeah.
But all the different aliens each had their own sort of world that they lived in. The Kardashians and the Romulans, and everybody had their own thing that you had to sort of keep track of. But the most fun were always the Klingons.
Yeah. And it's funny because, Ryan, in your opening, you mentioned how O'Brien makes the worst Klingon.
I was laughing before I even said it. I could barely get it out.
Yeah, because he's so comical, because it's almost hard for him to bring himself up to that level that you're talking about, where he has to be aggressive and in your face. He's the apologetic guy. I'm sorry, I'll do better. Like, no, that's not the approach.
No.
But did you at some point, Jamie, did you at some point address each actor, each of these four, which is, by the way, the scene is beautifully lit, but we could talk more about that later. But the four actors, did you have to address them slightly differently? Like, give any kind of notes, say, can you bring it up a little bit, like that? Or was it more of just kind of a collective thing where they all kind of knew their roles and you were just focused on directing the whole of the scene?
We rehearsed it ahead of time. And they were they'd been around enough Klingons, so they knew where they had to go. So I didn't really have to modulate them very much. It's usually the other actors, that guest stars, that would need it. So no, they slipped into their roles very well. And it was more about just making sure that we got the scene shot properly and gave them enough room to do another take or two if they needed it. So no, they were great. They worked together a lot too. They would go and rehearse together. So they came prepared.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, Cirroc, I know we were talking about this, I think a week or two ago. But also, by the way, guys, shout out to our friend, Miss Melissa Longo, who's got a new line of awesome shirts. This is a Guess Who, Captain Picard one. Check her out, Walking Art made by Melissa.com. We'll be seeing her later on the free-for-all. But we were talking about the episodes, the Deep Space Nine episodes that you have directed, James, and what the heck? They gave you all the best episodes. Either that or you made all of the episodes the best.
I had some great scripts, let me tell you. Yeah, I did.
Duet, Which
Duet was one of my favorites. It was an amazing episode. And what was interesting about makeup is the guest star, I'm blanking on his name.
Right. The guy that played the Cardassian. I can't remember his name right now.
He had trouble because of the makeup. He had to be there at 4. And during the day, he was having trouble remembering some of the lines. And so we were having to feed him the lines. But he was such a good actor that you never knew that. And so when it was all cut together, it was that wonderful performance. And I love the fact that you could have such a dark episode of a Star Trek show, because neither Voyager nor TNG were ever that dark. So it was really fun to be able to go dark on Deep Space Nine.
His name was Harris Yulin.
Thank you, Harris Yulin. Wonderful guy, wonderful actor.
Yeah, and that was, and if I remember correctly, Cirroc, I mean, certainly in the first season, that was the highlight of the first season, I believe.
I think so. Yeah, the performance in that was excellent. That was Kira's standout episode, and just they brought up such this really thought-provoking concept of who's on the right side and who's on the wrong side of something, are the similarities that two people have, even though they're completely opposite and they're fighting against each other, they actually have a lot in common. I thought that was just a great mental chess game between the two of them. Very well done.
Yeah, it was interesting to direct too, because I had so many scenes in the jail cell.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Big scenes, and I attacked them all differently. So each one is blocked differently, shot differently, so that the sense of variety could be brought in. And it was one of those episodes that, because of having to line feed some of Harris's lines, I didn't know what we had until it was all cut together. In fact, he wanted to change the ending. He wanted his character to survive, and made a big argument about it. And we brought it to Rick and to Brandon. I think Brandon wrote it, and Michael was still involved in. And they said no, and Harris was fine at that point. But he really was fighting to the death for his character not to die.
I think we understand why they made the decision to kill the character. I think that was, in a way, that was kind of the point of the episode. It was kind of an important, moment. And if you take that away, maybe Harris is thinking, well, then I can come back for the next few seasons, but yeah, I personally, I could see why they said no to that. And I do think, and Cirroc, back me up on this or tell me I'm wrong, but I believe that our good friend, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, said this was his favorite episode of the first season as well. He really loved Duet, and he was just blown away. And I remember before we reviewed it, he's like, dude, you guys, we got it. I can't wait for the Duet review. You guys are going to love it. And it was just amazing. It was beautiful. It's really a masterpiece, Jamie.
Thank you. Everybody did a great job.
And to add to that, I think one of our comments when we watched that was how fabulous the acting was, right? The performance. And you would have never known that those lines were pieced together as you just described, because you would have never known it, because it looked like he was delivering one of the greatest guest star performances we've had, and you would know that that it was chopped up in such a way. I just think that's just remarkable.
It's a trick about a good actor he was, because he was able to stay in character through that, and he wasn't embarrassed by what was happening, because there was a reason for it. I mean, this man who spent his life on stage doing 2 and 3 hours at a time. So it's not that his inability to remember lines, it was just the sheer exhaustion of having to be in makeup for so long, both sides of a 12-hour day. So everybody understood, and because he was so good, he was able to continue and keep his performance.
No, I've been there when that has happened before with actors, and it doesn't always come out looking like it was not done like that. Sometimes when you feed actors the lines, it looks like it just doesn't come across as their best performance, and it looks a little choppy. Right. But in this particular case, I mean, it was just like, it looked like an excellent heads up. And you talked about having to film in such a small space and create something visually for the audience, so that it wasn't stale and just stagnant. So you approached it differently each time, and lined up shots separately, so it wasn't all in one take.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, so this is the extreme opposite in this particular episode, because now you have the station, the ships, and also the Klingon, this hall of warriors. So tell me about the approach that you take when you have more to work with.
Well, this I look forward to because it was such a big spectacle. I think it was the most Klingons that they ever had at once in Star Trek, ever, before or after. I can't imagine they've had this many scenes. I haven't seen all of the Discovery episodes, but the ones I've seen haven't had. They did a lot of Klingons, obviously, but I'm not sure they had this many. But it was the challenge, of course, of having our stars in makeup as Klingons and the fun of that. And then the big battle scenes. I love battle scenes. I love action scenes. I did Way of the Warrior when we introduced, Michael coming back to the show, and that was a 2-hour spectacle with a bunch of battle scenes. And I really enjoyed having the when you're fighting the Klingons, it's the most fun because of the way they fight and the weapons that they use and with the words that they say. It's always so poetic. That it just makes it fun. And the lighting, you mentioned the lighting. The lighting was beautiful throughout that episode, and there's so much top light where you see these great shadows falling, and that's all. Chris Crossgrove was the key operator, and I can't believe I'm blanking on the DP. Jonathan Frakes, or Jonathan
West, West.
The rest of the DP, who is wonderful. In fact, that team was so good that when I did Charmed a few years later, and Star Trek was done, I brought them over, and they were on Charmed with me for 5 years.
Really?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now.
Yeah. I did. I just want to highlight that. Yes, I did enjoy the lighting and love the mystery of it. I felt like I was really in that space. It was kind of like being at a dive bar or something, a Klingon. So I enjoyed that, and the wine, the statue, and the closeness of the characters getting all up in each other's face. But one thing that I think that was really stood out to me in this episode was we had just seen prior to this Odo go from being a changeling to a human. And now in this very next episode, he's going from being a human to a Klingon.
Identity crisis, wow, poor guy.
Like this was a lot for this guy to go through in just such a short time.
Yes.
So I just love the way that was portrayed in the episode. I thought he did a good job, as well as playing the awkwardness of him not really feeling comfortable in the role.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think also this may have been an 8-day episode. Most of the episodes were 7-day episodes, and because this was the first one of the season, and because of all the makeup situations, I think this was one of the ones that got 8 days. Now, of course, everything is at least 8 days, sometimes 9, 10, 11. But in those days, that extra day really made a difference. It really helped you be able to shoot bigger scenes, more coverage, take more time than when you're cramming 7-day shows.
Now, Cirroc and I have both touched on the lighting a little bit, but I was hoping to hear a little bit more about it. I mean, it definitely stands out what you and the team did with the lighting and with the sets and all that. Can you walk us through what your thought process was? Was there something specifically you were trying to go for, or did you just say, hey, we've got years of seeing Klingon stuff, I know what the Klingons look like, let's just expand on that, or maybe there was some kind of new element you wanted to bring in, or like there were the statues and things like that. Was there anything you were trying to convey in particular?
That set design was done before I got there, because I was just coming in it's not like doing a pilot where the director is involved in all of those decisions. Mm-hmm. This was something that the production designer worked out with Ira and Rick for what that look was. And then the style of lighting for the Klingons had been established, and I think that Jonathan just took advantage of the big set. The top lighting is always traditional to have with those, and the colored lights. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of fun for them because it was such a big scene and so many days of it that they got to pre-light it and to test it and see what it's going to all look like ahead of time. And that's why it looks so good. Is they had enough time to shoot in that set to be able to pre-light it and do all sorts of different tests to check out the colors and see which work best.
Wow. Just sounds so fun. It just sounds like it just seems like
it was fun.
It must be a dream for like production designers and art department people to just have a day like this, especially if it's the first, and this I'm guessing on, but I would guess that the first episode of a season, you have a little bit more time to prepare for it, you know, and that's why, you know, a lot of times they're a bigger budget one is because they can kind of afford to, you know, not only do they need to make it look big and huge and it's kind of a bigger splash, but also they have a little bit of extra leeway time to kind of plan it out. And it seems like a production designer's eyes would get really big when they see the script and they say, "Ooh, all right, it's time to have some fun."
And the spaceship, the Cardassian ship that took them there was also a great set. That one really had a lot of top lighting, a lot of shadows and darks and light and bright. I love that. That was a great set too. One of my favorite spaceships.
Yeah, I remember that too. I just can't, you know, I just know that there's a lot of really big actors in this particular episode with Dukat, who likes to upstage everybody, and you have and you have JG who comes in there. You have Galron, who's like, his eyes are tremendous in this. I like, yeah.
And your house.
And your house. It's all eyes. And I'm like, wow, this guy's eyes are, you know, like just telling the whole story.
I love the fact that these guys each played 3, 4, 5 different aliens on the show over the course of this series. And you never know it because of the makeup. But they were such good actors and they could deliver every time. You know, a lot of people you put in that makeup and it just closed them right down. And they weren't able to act through it. And these guys, of course, were masters at it. And it's, you know, most of them were Shakespearean trained. And that's, for playing aliens on Star Trek, Shakespearean training really comes in handy, because otherwise, most actors who've never done that feel self-conscious about having to be that big, but still be convincing. It's very hard to do that because you're sort of out of your comfort zone. But these guys who have played Shakespearean roles, which aren't big by nature, fit right in.
That's a great
100%.
point. Yeah, because it's funny because Cirroc, you and I were always hearing about, it seems like almost every one of these actors, especially like the alien types, the ones that have to play larger than life, they're all Shakespearean. They're, you know, that's usually their bread and butter. And then it's usually, I think a lot of it is not just because they have to act big, but like a physicality too. Like they have to, their body needs to move in a big way. And Jamie, you also mentioned, you know, and we're all kind of talking about it, I feel like it's also just in the eyes. As long as the eyes aren't covered, then you at least untie the actor's hands a little bit there to just really throw something at you with their eyes. Like Rene Aubergenois was always great at that, very expressive with his eyes. Armin, great with that as well.
Well, you know, actors are acting with other actors, and the eyes are key. I mean, it's very hard to act well by yourself. So you really have to, in a performance, you're performing somebody else, and it's all right here. And when the best actors are really connecting and they're looking at you and you're feeling what they're saying, and you get, as an actor, you get sucked right into it, and it becomes a scene, not two people repeating lines. And it's a big difference. So the better trained, the more an actor can actually disappear into that role and into that scene, the better the scene becomes.
Yeah, and I think that you touched on the bigness of it. There's so much expression that has to go along with Shakespeare because it's complex, and you need to be able to simplify it for the viewer. So I think that once you become gifted at this level of translation, then you can translate, you know, anything and make it understandable and big and loud, you know, for the purpose of the viewer.
And they're also
definitely
they're very directable too. They're used to it. So if you want to crescendo at something and you tell them, why don't we build up to this, they'll be able to do that, or then drop off from here. They're very good at doing that. These guys are great. They were really fun.
So we've got
Yeah.
to jump into our break in just a second here. But Jamie, I've got a question that I've been dying to ask you, and I'm going to ask it after the break.
I do too, actually.
We've
I've
probably
got
got like 10.
couple.
I feel like
I've got two that I really need answered that I want to talk about. So, and Ryan, I know you do too, but I have a few that just interest me about, your career and the things that you've done. So I want to get into more of it.
Great.
Yeah. And so far, Jamie, this has been an absolute pleasure, by the way. It feels like we're in like TV class. We're just like learning a master class from a master, so this has been great so far. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody at home, we are going to take a super quick break and we'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc, Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We are joined by director and producer James L. Conway.
Hello, hello.
And we're reviewing Deep Space Nine Season 5, Episode 1, Apocalypse Rising. One of the most memorable episodes in Deep Space Nine because of the 4 Klingons, I think, and also because of the amazing storyline with the changelings. Very quickly, here are the trivioids that may or may not have made cutting room floor at the very beginning of the episode of this review. Worf points out that while Kira is in charge of Deep Space Nine, he's in charge of the Defiant. Quark says Odo is a depressed ex-changeling. Odo loves the sound of suds, almost a Simon and Garfunkel song. There are 30 ships stationed at Tyga Core at any given time. Starfleet gives Sisko 4 modified Polaron emitters. Kira renders Dukat speechless for the first time ever. Has a beautiful scene. Dukat tells the 4 new Klingons, pics or it didn't happen. Chief O'Brien is the worst Klingon ever. Lieutenant Villickspren is pregnant again. And glory to you and your house.
Yes. I like it.
You guys want to mention real quick that scene with Kira and Dukat? Because I do feel like that was the first time where Dukat, the guy that always has something to say, just sat there. He went, and everybody at home, that was the scene when Dukat notices Kira is pregnant, and he says, "Oh, how does Shakar feel about it?" Or whatever he said, and she says, "Oh, Shakar's not the dad. O'Brien is," and he was just flummoxed by it.
He was like, "I don't even know what to say about that." I actually that was a great line that actually did leave him speechless. I enjoyed that interaction.
Yeah.
But I also like the line. It was not the line, but this was just an interesting thing. They were like, how are we going to discover if he's a changeling or not? And then Sisko says, Starfleet has given us these. And then he pulls out these balls. And I'm like, so Starfleet, that's the answer. And I thought that was a little funny wordplay right there.
They look kind of like those Pokemon things.
Yeah, those balls they were funny. They were cute a little bit. But I did like also.
It's one of those props you get. It's one of those props that you get. You could look at and you go, "Okay, now we have to make sure this don't come off really silly."
Yeah, they look like some kind of toy. I think I've never seen them market that as a gift for anybody, but maybe one day.
Well, it worked because Worf did say it is a children's toy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It looked like a children's toy.
It's funny. I hadn't seen the episode since we made it 25 years ago.
Wow.
And I forgot the twist at the end. So that was fun for me to realize that it was actually reversed in terms of who was the evil, the changeling. So that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I liked the twist. I thought it was great writing. And I also thought it was great writing that they used Odo's skills of observation, which we've known him to have throughout the series, of being very detailed about his observations of things, and especially analyzing people's behavior. And in the beginning of this episode, he was so down and out and depressed that he wasn't using that skill set. And I like the way the writers flipped it and made that the thing that was the, saving the story or saving the day, was the thing that we've always known Odo to have, which is innate in his being, not just being a changeling or a person or a Klingon, but just who he is, being a detailed observer, watching how JG's, I always forget JG's, Martok, watching how Martok was, behaving and analyzing, also how Galron was using the Klingon way of defending his honor and fighting him, and realizing that there was something there. Good writing, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Very good writing. The scripts for DS9 were always fantastic.
Yeah, and that it also gives Odo almost a redemption story for himself. It reminds him of his value, because it starts off the episode where he's feeling down, basically thinking I'm useless, I'm no good anymore. And then of course Sisko gives him that first nudge saying, I need my chief of security, which is, saying that's you, you're not just some dude who's useless. You are still the top guy and then very important to me. And it kind of allows Odo to prove to himself his own value. It comes mostly from his mind, not just because his arm can turn into a blanket or whatever, or he can turn into a rat.
Right.
So, Cirroc, do you want to hit him up with one of our hard-hitting questions now, or shall I do it?
Well, I'm going to go with my lighter of the beginning ones, and that is, looking back, I see two shows that I grew up watching on your resume, and I wanted to talk about them. One of them was Hunter, and the other is Macgyver.
Yes,
and they jump out as being a couple of the shows that I grew up watching, and were some of the ones I hold dearly to my heart. So I just wanted to ask you about your experience on those shows.
Macgyver, I loved doing. I did, I think, 7 of them over the first 2 or 3 years. They moved to Vancouver in 88 or 87, and I did 3 or 4 up there that year. And that was the first time I shot in Vancouver, which I've now done millions of times. It was one of the first shows to shoot up there. It was a great experience. Ricky Dean is one of the most fun actors to ever work with. He was a great guy. And in those days, there were a lot of single male lead shows, like Macgyver. Macgyver didn't have a team. Ricky Dean was in almost every scene of that episode. There were a few times you'd cut away to just the bad guys, but in those days, you had a male driving these detective type shows who were in almost every frame of every episode. So it really made it tough work for the actor to do that all the time. Same with Hunter. The two of them, first of all, he was 6'7" and she was like 5'2". So the 2 shot was a thing of beauty, because it was 2 people walking along and they're like this. So it was a very wide lens. And I liked doing Hunter. There was some trouble with Fred and the writers of the show, and he was very unhappy with the scripts he was getting at that point. So there were a lot of angry phone calls between Fred and the production office. And ultimately, later in the series, Fred took over as the creative head of the show in terms of the writing staff. He became running it because he had very specific ideas about what he wanted the show to be. I pretty much stayed out of that. I had a great time with Fred, and I had a great time doing the show. And it's fun to have done some of these iconic television shows. So, in fact, my wife was an actress, and she had done a Rockford File, and I never did meet Jim Garner. I would love to have met him. But, it's nice to have been involved with some of these really iconic TV shows.
Wow. Yeah. Macgyver, man. That's when I was a kid. He was the guy, man. He was amazing. So I did want to ask you as well. You've been in 4 Star Trek series, multiple episodes in every series. And again, some of the best. I'll just, on Deep Space Nine alone, Duet, Necessary Evil, The Way of the Warrior, Little Green Men, Shattered Mirror, For the Cause, and Apocalypse Rising.
Wow.
That's like a who's who of Deep Space Nine episodes, right?
I had some great episodes.
But beyond that, I was just kind of wondering, what do you think it was about you that you brought to the table that had the people of Deep Space Nine and all 4 of these Star Trek series that had them, that keep calling you back? what was it about you that they just kept calling you over and over again saying, we need James?
It's a couple of things. One, I had been an original Star Trek fan when I was in college. It was airing and reruns, and I'd watch it all the time. So I came to the very first season of Next Generation, and I got the show. I got along with all the actors. I got along with the producers. I knew the history of Star Trek. I got along with Gene for what little time we had with him. And I felt very comfortable on the bridge, so to speak. That world, I just slipped right into. And with all the aliens and all the costumes and the way you had to shoot it and the evolving nature of visual effects. Because when we first started in visual effects, if we're going to do a green screen scene, they had to bolt down the tripod. They'd go to a special camera that had 5-pin stuff so that there would be no movement in the little film. Nobody could move and there was a green screen. It was so primitive. But by the time we were doing Enterprise, you could do just about anything. You could practically shoot it with your iPhone. So the whole evolution of visual effects was very much part of it, which I embraced. And the way I shot, I got along with the cast, I got along with the crew, which is always important for longevity. And I got along with Rick Berman. He really liked my style and the work that I delivered, as did the showrunners, I hope, of the other shows. So that's why I kept coming back, is because as I would have time that I was free, I'd be able to call Rick and say, I'm going to have some time and so, do you have any episodes available? And the reason I got the pilot for Enterprise, at that point, I left in 96. This was the last one that I did of Deep Space Nine, because I was offered executive vice presidency of Spelling Television.
Wow.
So I left for 6 years to be an executive at Spelling, where I was running all the production. And while I was there, Rick called me and said, I have a script for the new Star Trek Enterprise. I want you to direct the pilot. We were owned by the same people. Spelling was owned by Paramount. So I went to Aaron Spelling and I said, they want me to direct the pilot for Enterprise. Would you let me release me for 6 months to go do that? And he said, yes. So I got to go do the pilot and then came back to my job at Spelling, which then transitioned into producer, director, executive producer of Charmed. But I would come back once a year to do an episode of Enterprise, even though I was still working at Spelling, because I wanted to keep my hand in it and see all the actors and just do that. So the longevity was because I love actors, had great casts on all the shows. I love the scripts. I really worked well with the writers on the shows, and they must have liked my interpretation of their scripts, because that's why you keep coming back. It's when the director, I mean, we're only there to shoot the vision of the writers. And if you put too much of your own personality in there and you're not true to the nature and the spirit of the series, it's not going to be a very good episode. It's going to bump. So as long as I could visualize the writer's vision, that's somebody they're going to want to have coming back.
Wow, definitely.
I want to piggyback off of that, and I want to get into, you said asking for 6 months leave of absence.
I was like 6 months.
Yeah, and so I don't know if that's the exact amount of time, but I wanted to get into, I'm sure that it takes more time to do the pilot episode of a series that hasn't, that's freshly airing. So you're essentially introducing the entire show, as opposed to doing an episode of season 5 of Deep Space Nine, one of episodes. So I wanted to get into just what kind of preparation goes into launching a series like the pilot episode.
Well, let's see. It was a 34-day shooting schedule instead of the normal. Normally, you would have 16 days to do it. 2 hours. Was 34-day shooting schedule, and the prep time, and that's 5 days a week. So you add in the weekends, you can see how much more time that actually was. And then there's the prep time was at least that, probably longer. So when you start a new Star Trek show, you have a script that everybody loves, but you have no cast. And everybody sort of knew that Scott Bakula was going to be the captain, but it wasn't set in stone until like 2 weeks before we were going to start shooting, or maybe even a week before. They were negotiating with the deal and doing all things like that. He had worked with Carrie Mulligan, or Carrie, the president of the studio, before, which is why they all thought about Scott.
McLuggage, yeah, McLuggage.
Yeah. So Scott was always in their back pocket, but all the other cast members we had to find from scratch. We really had no one in mind. So the casting process went on for at least a month, maybe more, where we would see people 3-4 times a day, 3-4 hours a day, and then cycle through them until we found a cast that we liked. Meanwhile, we're designing a new spaceship from scratch. And we had concept meetings about what we wanted to look like. The feeling we wanted was like to feel like a submarine, unlike the big airy spacey things like Deep Space Nine had and Voyager and Next Gen. We wanted this to be primitive because it was all before all of that. And the lighting design, and we even talked about how we want the cameras to be moving on the bridge. So they designed a special crane that was part of the initial design. So the camera was always on. You can get into nooks and crannies so we could do all sorts of really cool shots. And you talk about the lighting design. You talk about the wardrobe. There was always an issue with the suits where they had to pull them down like this all the time, because they would stand up and pull it because they'd wrinkle. And so they were trying to beat that with the new wardrobe. They didn't. I'll tell you a funny story. I did an episode of the Orville, and I was telling that story, and they had the same issue where you stand up. So I think it's an ongoing thing. If you don't want wrinkles on your suit, there's no way to sort of defeat that.
Yeah.
So there's so many different things that you want to get right the first time. Now, I will tell you a story that people don't always know is after the first week of shooting, Kerry McCluggage had been in London, and he came back, saw the dailies, and hated Scott's hair. He wanted Scott's hair the way it was when he did Quantum Leap, I think, or something like that. And Scott had done something else with his hair that we all liked, but Kerry had something else in mind. So we had to go back and reshoot all of Scott's work for the first week, which added a couple days.
Wow.
Yeah,
really?
I think we brought that time into the schedule. But that's one of those things you never expect coming. But he was the president of the studio, and if he says redo it, we redid it.
Wow. So we've got our associate producer, Homer Frizzell, that's hopping in right now. Let me add him in because he's got something pretty cool for us. Hey, Homer, we see you. There you are.
Hi.
How's it going?
Hey there. Good to see you.
So we kind of got off topic because we love Star Trek so much. We're actually talking about Enterprise. But one final thing on Enterprise, Jamie, is that you did mention in your description how they wanted the ship to look like, or you all wanted the ship to look like a submarine. And what's funny is myself, as a Star Trek fan, since way back in the day, I do remember reading that specific word before the show even aired, that they wanted to build something that had the feel of a submarine. So it's really interesting 20 years later almost that you're still using these same kind of descriptions, because it did kind of set me up as a viewer to kind of understand what you guys were going for, the look you were going for. And it did have that feel, and it made sense as to why you wanted that feel.
We wanted to be cramped. In fact, I don't know if you remember, but in Scott's cabin, he had to duck at certain parts to get to different things because it wasn't big enough for him to be able to stand. And that was intentional. That was something that we built in there, that you have to duck at certain spots.
So Homer, hello, by the way, all the way out in Upper Manhattan. You've got the script for this episode, and you said that there were some cool doodles and some nice
lots of cool doodles, and some of them I'm still trying to understand. Mainly it's the abbreviations that were used. And so, like, for example, at the beginning you have Dax and Sisko coming up the turbolift, I think into the Defiant. And that looks like this.
Correct. That's, if you notice, there's the turbo lift, and if you look at the shot, the camera's on two of them. It then hands off to somebody else, who then walks back and then walks through, and that's the camera and the camera direction's going. I've completely prepared every scene before I shoot, and I do sketches. I do all the blocking ahead of time, and I always looked for ways to use the cameras as well as I could. Now, where did you get that? I recently sold a bunch of those things because I wanted the fans to have them, because I weren't doing me any good.
Wow.
This is probably one of those. I got it on eBay, say a couple years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow. And so, there are lots.
So hang on. So Jamie, is that an original James L. Conway piece of art?
Yes.
Wow, that's awesome.
I had a bunch of these scripts, and they were just sitting in a box, and I said, fans would probably love this, especially Star Trek fans. So there's
Yeah.
somebody in Hollywood that I know that sells them, and I gave them to her, and I got some money, and she sells them for money. But more importantly, fans get them who love them and cherish them. So
Right.
I think it's a win-win for everybody.
So that
Yeah,
is
it was.
a thing you've got there, Homer. It's authentic. You can verify.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Um,
you were saying, Homer?
Well, I actually here's one I just have to go back through and try to figure out what's going on this page.
So that's the shot list, basically. That's
Okay.
the middle is at the 63, 66. That's the first shot is a medium dolly, then a medium shot, and it literally talks about how the camera will be going from one person to another, and the amount of coverage that I need. So when I would visualize a scene, I would do all of the shots, and then as I do my shot list for the day's work, I would look at it and make sure that I had enough time to do everything I planned. And if I didn't, I would have to either consolidate the shots or expand the shots. But I visualized every scene before I got there. And I put it in my scripts.
Yeah, lots of drawings in there. I have a question about something that's not in the script, but is in the episode.
Okay.
Ooh. Nice.
Yeah, so there's a scene on the promenade with Jake and Dr. Bashir
Right.
that I don't have in this script. And I wonder if you have information on that you could share.
By the way, that was our favorite scene.
Yes.
My favorite.
I think that we may have been short and they added it, or they may have realized during production that they needed it. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Because I was looking for a drawing of the promenade. I was like, oh, it's not in there. And you have a nice drawing of Quark's Bar, and then you have the Hall of Warriors. And it was really neat to see, there were going to be 8 statues, but then there ended up being 4. And so they're X'd out on each of those drawings. Yeah.
Well, the art department gives you blueprints or floor plans, and I would base it on that. And depending on the set, I would either use their floor plan or make my own version of it.
Yeah, I have some with the floor plans too.
A lot of times, just real quick on that scene that was missing, I was just thinking a lot of times, writers always are saying things like raise the stakes. That's vital to a good script, raise the stakes. And sometimes they might kind of go back and think we need to stress out the audience a little bit more. We need to make them worry a little bit more. And putting a scene with the main character's son saying, hey, not in so many words, but acting like, I don't know if my dad is going to come back. And another character saying, don't worry, he'll be back. Just that added 30 seconds or 60 seconds raises the stakes for the audience. It makes the audience go, whoa, wait a second.
Right.
Nobody is even thinking they're going to come back. They're not sure if they're ever going to see these guys again. And that really raises the stakes for us. So I don't know if maybe that was a thing.
Yeah. And sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, the other way that they did that was it's like Dukat wanted to get a picture of those guys as Klingons and didn't want to wait until afterwards. So said, no,
good.
Yeah, that was good. I just want to show one more because you were talking about the ones that they provide. And here's one of the Klingon Hall of Warriors.
Yep.
If you can kind of see that there.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
So
ladies and gentlemen, I think we can see why they keep bringing Mr. Conway back because he is detailed and oriented. He's got all the details laid out, the shots laid out, the set design. That's why he's the best of the best. That's why we have such fond memories of the experience that we had. And that's why he didn't come to set like scratching his head, like, what are we going to do? He was very cool, calm, and collected when he was on the set. There was never any sense of panic or desperation. Like I said, just everybody remembers, at least I remember you as just being a class act and a really good person to work with.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I also want to say that we just reviewed the season 4, and Little Green Men was also on our top list of last season's episode. We felt like The Visitor and Little Green Men were the top 2 episodes of season 4. So I just want to tell you directly that that's how we, the audience, the fans, feel about it.
And I love making that episode. It was fun to be able to do one that had so much humor in it.
Yeah.
Is that something
and
you kind of wanted more of? It sounds like you definitely answered that one very quickly. Was that something you kind of longed for? Was more humor in shows?
Well, I loved working with Armin, and that was such a showcase for Armin. And I had done a horror movie called a sci-fi movie called Hangar 18, which was basically that story a few years earlier. So when I read the script, I went, "This is great because it's right up my alley." And then it was just so funny what they did when they landed on the planet. And there's that moment where they're shaking. Someone put they're like this, you're going like that.
Yeah.
Just, it became funnier as we were shooting it. Just the actors brought it to life so much. And I remember sitting down with Ira ahead of time when we were doing the tone meeting, and he was very worried about the humor being translated well because we hadn't done a lot of humor. He didn't know if I could do humor. So we talked a lot about it, and I think he was very happy with the result.
And also, was it an early decision to not have them kind of speaking the same language early on in the episode? Because there was that communication barrier that it started out with. That started off like that?
Yes, I think that was in the script. That's something that they had always done, as far as I remember. It was a great script.
Yeah, the comedy worked well. I was laughing the whole time. Plus, an element of seriousness there too, that it like this could have possibly happened in such a way. So it definitely tickled us. And also, Way of the Warrior was another big episode.
I loved doing that.
Yeah, I just want to give you your props, man. You're awesome.
Yeah, we could keep going and just keep complimenting everything that you've done, because when we look at the list, we're just like blown away by all of it. Sadly, we only have a couple minutes left. Otherwise, we'll just keep complimenting you if that's okay.
Well, let's compliment the writers. It starts with a script.
Homer, were there any other things that jumped out at you with the script or any of the drawings?
A lot. And then just based on what I've heard so far, I need to go back through, and now I understand some of the nomenclature. I may have other questions later. I think I can find you on Twitter. So I can. Okay, perfect.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I just the medium, and I was like, oh, of course, that's M, because I'm getting used to the different abbreviations for the characters as well, and then trying to figure out what the like this means. And I think that's character that doesn't have a name, but I'm not positive.
Show me, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be looking. Shouldn't take me too long.
I had a question about some of your early work, like really, really early, like 70s stuff, Jamie. And you did two projects. One is In Search of Noah's Ark, and the other one was In Search of Historic Jesus. Nice. And I just wanted to know what, is that something that you personally had interest in kind of doing, or is it just something that you were commissioned to do and it was outside of your own personal?
I worked for a company called Sun Classic, and we were based in LA, but then we moved to Park City. We did a show called Grizzly Adams, and we based it in Park City and shot in Park City, and then stayed here. And based on the success of Grizzly Adams, we then did 12 movies of the week for NBC. But it was that company. We did television, and we also did exploitative four-wall movies. And In Search of Historic Noah's Ark and Historic Jesus, that was the we also did Beyond and Back, and it was they started doing animal movies in the beginning, but it was basically these pseudo documentaries, and they'd go from city to city because we only had like 100 prints, and they would just barrage the television, and we were the first ones to actually use commercials for movies. Nobody did it in those days because a movie would open in New York City with 3 houses and stay there for 2 months. So we were the first ones to go in and have 10 movie theaters for the same movie in a town. And they would only be there 2 or 3 days, and then they'd move to another place. So we had the commercial. But these were not things that I really had an interest in. There was more a commission thing. The fact that I survived In Search of Noah's Ark and had a career still baffles me to this day. But I have to say, the movie was, at the time, the second highest grossing independent movie of all time. in the 70s. It was
Wow.
we made it for like $600,000 and it grossed over $30 million. And that's $30 million in 1976.
76.
Really successful movie. But it wasn't a very good movie.
No, I just mentioned it because there weren't too many people doing that kind of a topic at that time. And it just seemed like it was groundbreaking as far as that. Now there's a bunch of such documentaries and things like that. So I just thought, wow.
Do it in the theater and make it an event. And we also did Bermuda Triangle. So there was a lot of shows like that we did.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're just about out of time here. Cirroc and I are big history buffs, so that's why our eyes open wide. Oh, here's one more thing. What do we got here?
Here we have the Klingon jail cell.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have Martok outside, and then you have the X's, and then you have
okay. The little box there is the camera. That's the lens of the camera. That's where it's pointing.
Perfect. Okay.
Wow.
And then sometimes you'll see arrows, and that would be a pan or a dolly.
Yeah, I got that, especially on that opening scene there, because I was like, wow, they got this dolly sequence. They're walking down here, and so you had the camera on the inside. Okay, now I get it. Thank you.
Jamie, you remember this 25 years later, just off a glance. That's amazing.
Well, believe me, they all, after so many years of doing it, you know exactly what you're seeing when you see it.
Yeah.
I'm amazed by the precision of the drawings. It's actually amazing. You're like an architect with your. This isn't just like a hand sketch doodle thing. This is like, all the measurements are almost proportionate. It looks like
those were floor plans by the art department.
Oh man!
When I drew from scratch, it looked like doodles. I mean,
okay.
He did the X's.
Where are you? That's a great set you're in. Wherever you are.
Who's that?
I have a green. Oh, I have a green screen. This is the is the Hall of Warriors.
Oh, great! That's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good for you.
Mine's not a green screen.
They're both on your set, Jamie. They're on the set that you had.
So we do have to run and do the free-for-all next. We do want to give a very special thanks to Carmen Shamwell, PJ Tomas, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Yvette Blackmon, Homer Frizzell. Hey, Homer. Dr. Marie Segal, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Eve England out in Wales, and Tim Baum and Titus Mohler. Also a gigantic thank you to Mr. James L. Conway for joining us today. Really cool.
Thank you.
It's a great time. We do hope to see you again sometime soon in some capacity or another.
Great. It was great fun, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody at home, stick around for the free-for-all. We'll be right back on the seventh rule.
Good one.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Melissa Longo, Homer Frizzell, Timothy Baum, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Dr. Marie Segal, and Dr. Susan V. Gruner. James L. Conway is no longer here, but his memory sticks with us. And we're still talking about director stuff. Homer, you have the floor.
Yeah, so you saw that I have the director's script, and he has a lot of drawings, and he has the plan about how the shot is going to go. And I thought, wait a second, you don't just go home and write that up without doing some work beforehand. So I was curious, Cirroc, like, does a director walk the set? Do they take pictures? How do they prepare that you've seen for whatever shot, whatever sequence of shots they're going to do on a particular set, like, on the promenade or on the Defiant or where have you?
Yeah, clearly I wasn't prepared to be a director when we were doing this show, which is why I never directed any Deep Space Nine episodes, because because the amount of preparation I was not prepared for. We had a little bit of insight with James Conway about meeting with the set designers, meeting with costume, meeting with wardrobe. There's so much preparation that gets beforehand, like before I show up on on my call time. And I remember talking with Avery about Far Beyond the Stars and the kind of preparation that was involved with him, picking out furniture in the house, picking out books, like that, you know, there were certain wardrobe choices that he wanted to make.
Details.
Yeah, so many details. And so when you walk in there, you're thinking, oh, okay, we'll just figure it out. But no, it's actually been planned long before you showed up to work that day. And I think with the script that you showed us, Homer, it's an excellent example of the kind of preparation that goes into, sometimes with good directors, that goes into filming. His outlines, his shot outlines were detailed. His you know, he knew exactly the layout of the set, each location that he was going to be filming, and which angles he wanted to approach it, and where they would be standing and coming from. So when we're doing the show, usually they call us to set and we do a rehearsal. That's the usual process. Everybody brings their script, their sides, their little minis or their regular script or whatever, and they show up to the set with their material and we do a rehearsal. They call it blocking sometimes. And that's when we figure out who's going to stand where and what kind of movement is happening inside of the scene. And sometimes the director wants to just watch you do it. So you'll just show up and they'll be sitting back and they'll just want to see what naturally occurs. Like, okay, so you're coming in, you're going to be coming in from there, or you're going to be sitting, or is that where is that where you feel comfortable seated right there? Is that where you feel like you want to be? And then sometimes they direct you to come from a certain way. Like, no, I want you coming in. I think you should be kind of over here, working over here and doing something, cleaning up over here. And I'll have you come in from this side. And why don't you kind of, go this way? And then they'll actually have a whole, sequence of events for you to kind of follow these steps. And then sometimes they want to see what you would naturally do, if you would stand up at a moment, or would you be, would you sit down to emphasize a point? And they'll let you kind of have a little bit of wiggle room on those kinds of things, but not if it changes the shot to the extent where then you would need coverage and you would need all this extra camera work, because that actually adds to the workload of the day. So yeah, that's the usual process, is coming in, doing the blocking, rehearsing, finding out where we're going to be standing, and then they put all the marks down. Then we leave out, so that the original blocking happens with the main actors. Then they put all the marks down. Okay, so Sisko, he's going to be standing here. Then they'll put a colored tape that's Sisko's colored tape. So he has, like, purple is Sisko, then Jake is yellow, and Kira is blue. And so if you look down and there's enough actors in the scene, there'll be a rainbow of colors of where you have to stand and marks that you have to hit. Sometimes there's sandbags there because they don't want you to go too far. So they'll put a sandbag so your foot actually hits a sandbag so that that's as far as you should be going. So they block the scene. We all figure out, okay, Sisko's here, Kira, you're there, Jake, you're walking in from this side. And then they light it. They send us out. They bring in the crew. The crew sets up all the lighting, sets up the camera, lays down the track for the camera, and does all the detail stuff that's important for it to be set up. And then they frame all the shots with the background actors. So each one of us has a stand-in that is there for this particular time while the lighting guys are doing stuff. They say, they want to make sure that, you stand there, we're going to move the light a little bit this way, a little bit that way. Then when they call us back, all of that has already been set in motion and set in place. So we just, we stand and hit our marks that we originally laid out in the beginning.
Hey, Cirroc, real quick, when you mentioned how some directors come in and they say, oh, what do you guys want to do? What are you planning? Have you ever seen an actor go like, oh, I just learned my lines.
Yeah, I've seen it. I'm like, you see all type of things after a while, but yes, I've seen that. I've seen actors tell directors, well, you tell me, like,
Yeah,
well, you tell me, where do you want me to be? That's your job. I'm just here. I'm here to remember my lines. You tell me where you want me to stand, if you want me to sit, if you want me driving or parked or whatever it is. But, that's what you have to figure out. I'm here to deliver the
goods.
The goods.
Melissa is wearing a brand new shirt today, everybody, that you can get at walkingartmadebymelissa.com. The link is in the description box below. And that is obviously our friend Guinan. She's an enabler. She's the one that got Worf addicted to prune juice. And I, of course, have the brand new Picard that you saw earlier.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
And Homer looks like he's wearing something from Abyssinian Kiosk.
Yes.
Ta-da.
Oh, yes, he does. He's got that Sisko.
Ooh.
That's right.
You can also find that in the description box below.
And it's dressed up.
Kiosk. Dr. Susan V. Gruner tells us she's got something. Let's see it. Oh, chat pack.
Oh, it looks cute and red.
Nice.
Really good.
I love that.
So that is also walking art made by Melissa.com, right? Everybody can find that in the description box below. You can see the link down there. Anne Marie, are you wearing something?
I'm
You
always
usually are.
wearing
Yeah, I thought so.
My favorite.
Ta-da. That's the Ferengi Eyes slouchy shirt. You can get that at our online store, patreon.com. Sorry, teespring.com/the seventh rule. You can get that in the description box below as well. The link. All right.
With discounts from Patreon.
Oh, well, let me do mine too. I got one on.
That looks like Wolverine. Is that Wolverine or
This is-
something?
This is my sister's Abyssinian.
Oh, no way.
One of the original drawings. Yeah. Different
Wow.
design.
I love
but,
that.
yeah. I don't know. It looks like
That's
a
great.
superhero.
Yeah,
Kind of, looks like a superhero to me. That's why I liked it. So
it really does. That's awesome.
It's a
Oh my
little
God,
bit like
I-
the Flash.
I love
that's
fashion
a
shows.
Flash, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a nod to Desilu
Oh, I
And-
love that.
and her contributions to making Star Trek happen. She was one of the owners of the Culver Studio at one point.
And she's credited for saving Star
Awesome.
Trek.
Starting.
That's, Yeah.
So, all right, guys, here's a fun question. James L. Conway has directed so many amazing Star Trek episodes over 4
You
different
mean
series.
iconic?
Yes, that is what I meant. Amazing is a dumb word. I can't even believe I used it. I'm embarrassed. But here are the episodes he
Yes.
did.
Starting with the best one.
Next Generation, he did Justice, The Neutral Zone, and Frame of Mind. In Deep Space Nine, he did Duet, Necessary Evil, The Way of the Warrior, Little Green Men, Shattered Mirror, For the Cause, and Apocalypse Rising. In Voyager, he did The 37s, Persistence of Vision, Death Wish, and Innocence. And lastly, in Star Trek Enterprise, he did Broken
Lastly.
Bow,
Amazing.
Broken Bow, Judgment, Damage, and In a Mirror Darkly. So the question is, you know what this
Amazing.
question's going to be, right? What is your favorite episode out of all of those? I know Melissa.
Okay, guess. Guess everybody's favorite. Just kidding.
Oh, man. Melissa
That's
got physically injured when I asked that question just now.
Ask about favorites. There's so many good choices.
Yeah. And if you guys don't know which title means what episode, that's totally okay, because I mean, we don't remember them all. There are a couple in there that I didn't recognize either.
Like what?
I don't
Okay,
put
just
you
kidding,
guys
just
on the
kidding.
spot. Don't put me. I do.
Actually,
Yes, you do.
that's this whole segment.
All right. Well, Anne Marie, we'll start with you.
There we
If-
go.
God, it's so hard to decide.
Okay, so this is what we'll do.
Okay.
Very, very quickly as humanly possible. Anne Marie, you're going to tell us. Here we go.
Top two.
No, you're going to tell us what each of these episodes is to refresh everybody's memory, starting with.
Justice is epic. So that's the one where Wesley falls on the flowers
Oh, it's that
on
one.
Ito. Dude,
Yes.
why do you think I've been like starstruck this whole time?
That's
Yes,
the
it's
best
that.
one
Now,
ever.
why do you think I said iconic? Yes, so that's that amazing epic episode. Neutral Zone is the last episode of season 1, which is tied for my favorite. That's the one where like they get 3 people thawed who were cryogenically frozen.
It's this one, Cirroc.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh,
So it is just
yeah.
Best costumes ever.
it's the best.
Oh my God.
I love the Ito.
Now I know what we're gonna cosplay this year.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
No
I'll
way.
bring the toilet paper. You bring the safety pins.
They better.
I'll bring the 1-string violin, and you bring.
Anyway,
So or what the guitar, which is replicated in Neutral Zone for one of the 3 people who was cryogenically frozen. And that's also when the Romulans come back. And
okay.
Captain Picard famous
Yeah.
Sonny Clemens or whatever. So that's the episode where there's the line like it's always a game of chess with a Romulan.
Mm-hmm.
Frame of Mind, isn't that the one where like Riker's being forcibly held? And
Yes.
I don't know what the name of the planet is. And they're making him think he's crazy, and he keeps being in this play with Barkley. It's really, really good. It's a very like Brendan Braga episode.
Good one. Good episode.
Yeah, all his episodes are so great. The Deep Space Nine ones, I think.
We all
This is
know.
the
We
last
just
one, so we all know.
yeah, we just went through all those guys.
Oh,
Oh my
charm.
God, am I getting dizzy?
All
It's giving
right,
me vertigo.
and then Voyager,
Okay,
the 37s.
the 37th is the one with Amelia Earhart. Death Wish is the one with where like Q first makes his appearance on Voyager with Quinn, and he wants to die, and that sets the continuum off into like complete disarray.
Right, that's
Such
a
a
good
good
one
one.
too. Yeah.
Really good. And then I can't remember which. I'm really bad at Voyager episode titles. So Innocence and Persistent of Vision. I don't remember. Like they all start sounding the same in Voyager. Oh, this is the one where she's like, where she's like really into that weird Jane Eyre-ish holodeck episode, and then the lady like comes out and is haunting her.
Okay. And then what was the other one? Sorry, I hope I'm not
Innocence.
making everybody dizzy here.
Like
It's like micro.
Innocence.
Yeah,
Innocent.
you're right.
Which one's that? Oh, I
Oh, is
love
that
this
with the
one.
kids?
Oh,
Where one of the
right.
kids was in, like-
Okay.
That's a moron.
Oh,
Right.
it's so beautiful. And Tuvok sings his bedtime song.
Yes.
It's beautiful. I love that episode.
It's funny how we
God.
just see a picture of Tuvok and everybody goes, "Oh,
Yeah. I'm like, what the?
Plans.
Like, you just see Tupac in a garden.
It's so good. And
so
then Broken Bow.
we all know is the pilot to Enterprise, and then
Which one? I don't know Judgment and Damage. I do not know
Yeah, let's
Enterprise
see
names.
Judgment.
I know Damage, and I think Judgment. Yeah, Klingons.
nice.
Oh, that's fun. I
So
love
TJ's
that.
taken over for Enterprise here.
Uh-oh. Okay, and Damage was season 3 with the Zindi after the attack. The ship is
Oh.
really bad off, and they have to rob another ship to get a warp
Oh,
core.
right. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
then-
in a Mirror Darkly, I think everybody knows what that is, where they went to where they didn't go to the Mirror Universe. We go to the Mirror Universe, and they
Right.
have the alternate opening, and we get to see the USS Defiant Constitution class in action.
That opening sequence was just amazing. The theme song, right? The opening theme was just amazing. Like, so I wonder, we should ask him.
Like the most freaking epic list.
And then lastly, of course, he also did an Orville episode here.
So good.
That was the episode where they go
Liam
to a
Neeson?
ship. They go to a ship, and everybody on the ship doesn't realize they're on a ship. They think it's a planet, but it's like a big ecosystem of a ship that's flying into a star or something like that.
And then Liam Neeson.
That's one of my favorite
I've seen
Orville
that one.
episodes ever.
Okay.
Is good. He's talking about an amazing, amazing list. And obviously, those Deep Space Nine episodes are crazy good.
Yeah. So
They give him the good stuff, huh?
These are all very good episodes.
All right. So Tim Baum, we haven't heard from you yet. You've been very patient with us with your samurai hairdo today. Do you have a favorite out of those?
By far, Duet. I mean, to me, having watched the show, that was in the first season, and that set the tone for the whole series.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, and it's also one of the best hour of TV that's ever been shown. It was very powerful. It evoked a lot of World War II stuff, but it was just very intense, and the acting was incredible. With Nana and I forget who played.
Harrison.
Yeah, we just said his name. Yeah, it's like Harris.
Isn't it like
Harris
Mueller?
Harris Yulin.
Mueller.
No, Yulin.
Harris Euler's day off.
Yeah.
He's been
this was
doing
his
so
day
much
on.
bookkeeping.
That last scene when the Bajoran killed him, and why'd you do that? Well, because he's Cardassian, isn't that enough? And she's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And how amazing do you have to be like as a director to have confidence to just block like scenes with just two actors and like basically nothing else except a spotlight?
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it felt like a stage play.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in with you, Tim, and just go ahead and give my answer as a cosign to yours. I think Duet is the best episode. It's just, and we talked with him about it, and he mentioned how he did separate blocking for each one of those scenes inside of the prison cell. So you're inside a little prison cell area. It's not much. I mean, it's like being in the elevator. It's like not much to work with as a director, right? I mean, there's only so many things you can get done, but somehow between the dialogue, between the writing, between the shots that he chose, I just think that episode had me at the edge of the seat. And I will agree with you, Tim, by saying that it set the precedence as far as Deep Space Nine trying to tell bigger stories than just the characters of Deep Space Nine, but telling these bigger stories about humanity and kind of the cultural problems that we have when we're dealing with these kinds of sensitive issues. So I think that's one of the things that separated Deep Space Nine and made it step its game up and talk about larger issues. So that really was the blueprint for it.
Totally agree.
All right, so you guys are a two-person team for Duet right now.
We're the Duet.
Oh, you are the Duet. I love it. What about you, Melissa? What do you think?
I'm gonna add a third to this duet.
A triad?
Junior duet
Yes.
will become a trio. That's from Sound of Music.
Yes. As far as he's directed so many good episodes, and I think that is a testament to his skill as a director, that each one of these episodes does stand out. But Duet is just a beautiful duet between two people who are on, opposite sides of this chasm, or so we think. And then we come to see their common humanity, I guess. And it's beautifully done. There's not a whole lot of trickery or
Special effects.
special effects or anything like that. It relies on the dialogue, the director trusting his actors that they're going to deliver the goods, and they do. They hit it out of the park. So I'm going to say Duet.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think Nana, the change in her from the beginning of the episode to the end is her acting was just absolutely unbelievably good. Did she win any award or anything for that? Because she should have.
Star Trek always gets the shaft on awards.
Also,
It does. It does.
shout out to your review where you had Nana on and talked with Aaron too about that episode back in 7th Rule Season 1.
Yeah.
So Sue, it's a fourth. It's a fourth yay for
But I want to give a half a point to Little Green Men, which was fun. You know, the first time when I watched it back in the 90s, I thought it was stupid and I didn't like it. But now I watch it and I love it.
same.
It's just so cute.
Yeah, he mentioned James was talking about experimenting with the comedy on Deep Space Nine and him not having comedy background and DS9 not really being a comedy show, but I think they pull it off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think they pull it off.
I had the same kind of reaction. I think when I first saw it, I was like, what are they doing? What's going on? It was like interesting and fun, but it would also kind of confuse me, like threw me off. Like, is this a comedy? But nowadays I watch it. I love it. It's iconic. It's hilarious. It's charming. You know,
I'd rather sell it to you Australians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so great.
All right. Let's get this out of the way. Anybody else say Duet? No. All right. So here we go.
It probably
Homer.
is Duet, but
Nope. It's too late.
I like Duet, yes, and Little Green Men and virtually all of the other ones, but I'm going to go with In a Mirror Darkly. Yeah, and the reason it's not just the look of it, but it's also these are not the characters we know. These are the mirror versions from start to finish. And so I have to wonder about the challenge that the director faced with saying, all right, I know you've been doing this. I want you to do this. Or if it was a collaboration and they said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Like, I'd be really curious to hear him say how they arrived at where they ended up.
Yeah. That's always kind of been, I think we've discussed that before, but specifically more from an actor's point of view of just kind of like,
Right.
you know, how do they figure out what their character's going to be like? Besides, obviously, the script kind of gives them a hint, but there's more to it than just that, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
TJ, what say you?
Okay, I want to cheat
Uh-oh.
and
Yes.
pick one from every series.
No, you can't do that.
So TNG,
He's
Frame
allowed.
of Mind. Love that episode. It's a mind. It was a mind twist the first time I watched it, and I watched it again recently, and I think I finally understand what was going on in that episode. But I always loved it. All right, DS9, Shattered Mirror, Felicia Bell, Jennifer Sisko, the Defiant, kicking Worf's butt. Regent Worf, bow to the Regent.
oh, I just realized he does 2 mirror episodes,
Right.
like 2 mirrors for 2 series. Wow.
Yeah. And Voyager, I'm gonna go with Death Wish. That's one of my favorite Voyager episodes. I think one of the monologues that Q2 gave is one of the best monologues I ever heard.
Have you
And
been
then
Scarecrow?
on Enterprise, I'm going to go with Damage, also one of my favorite episodes of all time in Star Trek.
TJ, which one is that? Remind
Which
me.
one?
Damage.
The
Death
Enterprise.
Wish?
Yes.
Okay, Damage. Damage is in season 3. It's after they suffered the big bag attack from the Xindi on the ship. So the ship is pretty much crippled.
Is that the one where they have to steal from other people?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
that's
one
really
is so
good.
yeah.
Yeah, that
A
is
moral
good.
play.
So yeah, the moral conundrum of that. I always in my head canon, they went back and helped them after they got done.
Good, yeah.
Although they didn't show such a thing. But
It's a good one.
one of my favorite scenes in that episode was a thought that I always had, which was, what if, we ever saw the humans be the bad guy, and they're the unidentified shit that's coming and won't answer to hail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they did.
Amazing.
So I love that episode.
Yeah, it's definitely a moral play that they kind of touched on a few times with Voyager as well. Where Janeway was kind of like forced to say, well, we need it more, or I need Tuvok and Neelix more than I need whatever this guy is,
The Tuvix.
Yeah, but
Have you been the Scarecrow? That's from Death Wish.
Oh, that's from
yeah.
Death Wish, yes.
Yeah, and then in that Q episode, the other Q was like starting a video platform, if I remember
Quinn?
correctly. Yeah, no, he called
Wait,
it.
are you talking about in real life? Wait, is this
No,
a joke?
he called it QTube.
Yes.
But thank you for Runa.
Oh, God.
Don't get me so excited with the intros of your jokes. Then.
Okay, what's your favorite episode,
I
Emery?
knew it was coming.
I mean, I won't say they're the best, but for nostalgia purposes, like nothing says TNG more than Justice. It's so funny and amazing and iconic. And then one of my favorite episodes when I was really little was Neutral Zone, because it's just so fun seeing like the humans come back to life and the Wall Street guy being like, I probably have enough to buy this ship with my interest. Yeah,
I'm rich.
It's just all amazing. But I mean, every episode is absolutely brilliant and some of my favorites in all the series.
Cirroc, do you have a oh wait, no, you already said duet. That's right. We already got that. Did we get everybody?
Did we get you, Ryan?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Are you a duetter?
I can't
Better.
it's not fair. I feel like I'm gonna be like TJ and
You're
pick
gonna
more-
say something from Enterprise.
No,
Oh, okay.
you wish I would. Yeah, one of them is
You'd say
probably
Broken Bow.
one of them might be In a Mirror Darkly because of that intro theme, which was just brilliantly done. And I wish we'd asked James if he had a hand in that.
Oh, yeah, to review Enterprise.
Duet is absolutely, up there as well. It's maybe the best one. And Way of the Warrior is also very iconic to me and has many of the most quotable and memorable scenes ever. And lastly, Justice. Come on. We got to be serious about Justice.
So bad.
Anyway.
No justice, no peace.
Oh, that episode is everything.
We need a just duet.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Oh, A+.
So
A+.
good. Dude, when I go to Central Park and see flowers, I always think of Justice. Like, what would happen if I fell on them? It just is so pervasive in the way everybody thinks who watched it when they were little. So good.
All right. So that's it. We have a couple minutes left. If anybody wants to throw any thoughts out on season 4 or the beginning of season 5 or on this episode that we just finished reviewing.
I thought Homer was going to show us the outline of a Quark bar.
Yeah, I'll show
Right.
you. I'll show you the drawing of Quarks.
What are the odds that Homer has that script with the director on the show? I mean, good, because we're all Deep Space Nine fans.
Oh, wow.
That's so cool.
Looks like a robot face.
It does.
It does, and now I can't unsee that.
He looks sad but sweet.
It looks like a Ferengi whose head exploded.
Oh, Oh,
That's crazy.
But you see all the,
I guess
all the
that's the
moving
Dabo
around that
wheel?
Kirk does. Yeah. Yeah, that's the
Dude, that
Dabo
is
wheel.
so awesome.
Oh, they're not
Watch
bloodshot
the
eyes.
wheel, not the girl.
Yeah, it doesn't have any of the girls, just the wheel.
And so is there writing in there too? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there's
like
some writing about
Cirroc
emphasis.
guy.
Any doodles
There's-
not about the episode?
There's a moment where Sisko says something and he just has in there Errol Flynn.
Ah,
Really?
interesting.
Yeah.
Errol Flynn. I wonder what that was
Yeah.
referring to.
Interesting
That was
too, because
near-
don't they mention
near the
him
beginning.
in past tense?
Here's
that's
an
exactly
interesting
what it is.
one. And if you think back, you think of the briefing room and how much movement there was as Sisko was walking around and all of that. So here's that one.
ah,
Dude, that's awesome.
Oh.
Oh my gosh. Look at the
Yeah.
algebra.
I know, it's
Yeah,
I love it.
shots.
yeah, that's legit. Nothing like verifying your script by the guy who actually drew all the drawings. He's-
Yes.
been
Would do it.
This is like also an
authenticated.
episode of Pawn Stars.
You've been
Yeah, it's pretty
authenticated.
cool.
You can get a
I
10
don't know if I
rating.
can find the Errol
That's
Flynn moment,
amazing.
I just think that would be cool if there was like notes like can't stand working with Sid.
Exactly.
So there's some stuff I can't tell what he wrote.
So
Dinner at
maybe-
4:00.
So here's something. It says enjoys it too much, but that's probably about
That's
The-
me.
That's
about
direction.
me.
Victor.
It's Gold Dukat.
Yeah,
That's about me.
that
Sorry.
is. That's Dukat. So that's the character.
Oh,
for
okay.
sure.
Oh, okay. Dukat. Oh, that's Dukat.
I knew it.
He loves that they're forced to look like Klingons in that
Oh
episode.
my god. Oh my god. No, it was Damar.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Like Damar's one-liners in this were out of control.
Shout
Yeah.
out to Casey.
Mhm.
Yeah, he killed it. He killed it. Dukat got the. I like the shutdown on Dukat though. The way Kira was like, no,
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
that's a Brian
yeah.
thing.
That episode of Maury playing out in the corridor was
And
amazing.
she just left it out there like you figure it out.
You could
That's
just
the
see
Errol
like his
Flynn
head exploding.
moment.
Yeah. What's the Errol Flynn moment?
Cisco
Um,
waits
Cisco,
a
wait to
beat.
beat then.
and then
And when he says me,
yes.
because I love that. I actually
Yeah, I
wrote
think
that
so.
down.
Yeah, that was
Yep.
a really
I
good
wrote that
one.
down in my notes. The way he delivered that me, it was a one word thing, but Kira says, "Who are they sending?" Right, and he had that pause,
Okay.
and the note that he hit, he had this lower. He lowered his octave a little bit,
yeah.
and I thought it was like, whoa.
he made it sound ominous. Yeah.
He made it sound ominous. He made it sound just. I was like, wow. I wrote it down like it's just one word, but I mean, Sisko did a great job.
Mhm.
And then there was another time where he said, "Let's get it done," and I was like, "Oh, okay." Sisko has another catchphrase. Let's get it done. You know.
I wonder how much money they spent on costuming for this episode.
I read that originally it was
Yeah.
supposed to be a double episode, so I bet they spent more than they might otherwise, especially when you have all the
Season
extras.
opener, so
Yeah.
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 Crazy, it's just one.
Bet you Avery and Renee and Colum would have gone on strike if they made that 2 episodes in that makeup. Like, no, 1 episode, dude. One
That's it.
episode.
Well, he did mention 2 sets of makeup artists that were on like a 24-hour rotation, so they actually had to hire, I'm sure, an extra
Mm.
set of makeup artists.
Mm.
So that was
What was it
And
in the
it-
doc where Colm said, "Me eyes, me eyes. I can't close me eyes." When he was getting the makeup.
oh yeah. That was Michael Dorn talking about
Yeah.
Colum being in makeup.
Right. Well, guys, we better run for this week's edition of the
The
Free
study
for
group.
All. But this was a lot of fun, and it's just shocking to look at the list that James L. Conway directed. Also, just the things that he's directed outside of Star Trek is it's a mind-blowing list as well.
Mhm.
Anyway, thank you all very much for joining us. Homer, Tim, TJ. I'm not going to do notes for everybody. Susan V. Gruner, Melissa Longo, and Anne-Marie Segal. For Cirroc, myself, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, who made us laugh many times in Little Green Men and other moments. Thank you all very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Seventh Rule. Oh, I'm supposed to say keep your ears open.